Hello and welcome to episode 14 of AARGH My Optics, a podcast where 2 or 3 adult men discuss, overanalyze and generally take a kid's toy and media franchise a bit too seriously. The toy media franchise in question usually being the Transformers, but not today. Today we take a break from our beloved robots in disguise and talk Spider-Man, specifically the live-action movies. I am your Bronze Age cocky nerd with a chip on his shoulder, Orion Ghia, and with me is my young, confused, and occasionally invisible co-host, Virtual Dave. Say hello to our listeners, Dave.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you. Now, this topic has been a bit of a bone of contention between myself and Dave, so by way as an adjudicator, we have a special guest co-host in the form of comic book eating, continuity devouring, canon scoffing, Galac-tosh. Welcome to the show, Galac-tosh.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
No worries. It's good to have you. So, in case you don't know or require clarification, we are talking about Spider-Man's live-action exploits on the big screen, specifically from the Sam Raimi trilogy starting in 2002 through the 2 Marc Webb directed Amazing Spider-Man reboot movies, and finally, Peter Parker's now numerous appearances in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, up to and including No Way Home, in which, spoilers, in which all 3 generations of movie Spider-Men meet. Obviously, there will be plenty of spoilers throughout the course of the podcast, so be warned.
My optics!
Now that's out of the way, how about we start at the beginning and talk about our personal experiences and relationship with Spider-Man, both on the screen and elsewhere. Dave, you demanded that we make this argument public, so how about you go first? What's your Spidey history?
My Spidey history is the same as many kids of the 90s with the 90s cartoon, Fox cartoon. That was my big introduction to Spider-Man as a child, and then as a teenager I got into the Ultimate Spider-Man comic books and Handful of Astonishing and various other runs at the time. I would get the odd comic of and read, but it was mostly the Ultimate one I read the most.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the Raimi movies was a big part of my Spider-Man love growing up, and that's.
I mean, how old were you when the Raimi movies came out?
I was probably about 9.
Now I feel old.
I was very young, very young.
So then you obviously followed the movies since then, and I know you're a big fan of the computer games as well, or have played quite a few of the computer games.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Galac-tosh. Let's hear your Spidey history.
Well, like many people of much older than that, my first experience of Spider-Man would have been the 1960s cartoon, constantly being run on a Saturday morning. And then after that, live action would have been the 1979 Amazing Spider-Man film with Nicholas Hammond.
Woohoo!
And its 2 sequels.
Yeah.
Spider-Man Strikes Back and Spider-Man and the Golden Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And then it had been the comics. Amazing Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
I got into comics about 1990. So I'd been reading around like the early 300s of Amazing Spider-Man started, back when it was good. And then when the Amazing Spider-Man cartoon, I'd been in my teens. Watched that every week. Yeah, so everything since about the 70s.
Yeah. Me and Tosh are kind of pretty much the same age. So my experience is similar. I remember the 60s cartoon being on telly in the mornings, although I can't say I watched lots of it. It seemed dated obviously because it was, in the 80s, or was it on in the 80s?
It was on in the 80s. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I really came to Spider-Man through comic books. Like, I used to pick up comic books when we used to go to the hairdressers, and my dad or my mum would buy me a comic book, and it was often 2000 AD or Eagle or something, and then eventually I started picking up the complete Spider-Man, so that would have been around early 90s, pretty similar to you, really. So yeah, my experience was very much the comic book. I didn't watch an awful lot of the cartoons. I certainly didn't watch the one that you know well, Dave. I know that cartoon. I remember it being on television, but by the time that was on, I was very heavily into the comics and that was on was it SNTV Live or something?
It was something like that, yeah. It was some Saturday morning show.
Yeah. I remember the movies coming out. I never saw the 70s movies. Even to this day, I don't think I've seen one all the way through.
Oh, they're gloriously bad. You should.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I've definitely seen clips of it, but I've not watched the whole thing. But yeah, I was very excited when the Sam Raimi movies were coming out, and went to the cinema to see the first one, and was blown away by it. I thought it was fantastic. And I continued to watch all of them, and watch the Amazing Spider-Man ones. And then obviously we went through to the MCU and his appearance in Civil War, and I enjoyed Homecoming. And that's where my interest in MCU Spider-Man started to wane. But I do go and I have seen them all and do watch them all. Maybe a mixture of morbid curiosity as to how wrong they can get it, or hopeless optimism that they get it right this time. Which I think is where Dave and I diverge in opinion. So, I mean, maybe we should talk about the three different continuities, or the three different stages. What's your opinion on the Raimi movies, Dave?
I think, as a trilogy, as all three films, I think they're brilliant. I think it's a weird...
Even three?
Even three. Even after rewatching it recently, I think it's about the world that Sam Raimi made as this corny, cheesy, kind of almost like a comic book at times type of world it's in to begin with, and just the way the characters are done. I don't know. I don't know how to best explain it. The world they've made fits Spider-Man really well, and I like the story that they were trying to tell for Spider-Man in this world.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably got the most specific style of the three.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's Sam Raimi all over, isn't it, though?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a Sam Raimi film. All of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's got some really, really fantastic, like, Sam Raimi ridiculous bits in it that... And then it's also got some very not fantastic Sam Raimi ridiculous bits. But yeah, it does feel very much like a Sam Raimi movie. And it is very comic booky. Even
the sprinkle of horror in it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is little sprinkles of horror and just weird shit like people turning into skeletons and stuff like that.
The bit in Spider-Man 2 where it's from Doc Ock's arms perspective. Very straight out of Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Complete horror.
Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, I think it's a very comic book kind of take, which I appreciate. Although it does veer into cartoonish here and there.
Oh yeah.
Again, Sam Raimi.
Yeah, but I really love the first two. The third one, not so much. I know that there's a slightly different cut of it that's apparently slightly better, but it's not. It is the weakest of the three for sure.
Oh yeah, I don't deny that at all. It definitely is. Yeah.
But Spider-Man 3, I think, gets a bit of bad press because it's not Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Sure.
It followed the greatest one of the three.
Yeah.
And then couldn't compete with that no matter what. And a bit too much studio interference, cluttering it up with bad guys.
Yes.
Yeah, because Sam Raimi didn't want Venom in the movie originally. It wasn't, because what I read was that Sam Raimi was very familiar with the kind of Steve Ditko kind of era villains, and not really that familiar with the more recent ones like Venom. So he was kind of encouraged to stick Venom in because they wanted to put a character that people were more familiar with, which, kind of gummed up the works really. And I heard an interview with Raimi saying that, he really shouldn't have done it because he didn't have any real love for the character and didn't really know what he was doing with it.
Yeah. It's been a big thing about that film is the interference into just have Venom be pushed in, the black suit, that whole plot line wasn't meant to be there.
Yeah, and it didn't need to be there. It felt very superfluous.
Yeah. If they're going to push that in, they should have pushed it in place so they could be ready for Spider-Man 4. And then do the full black suit saga properly.
Yeah, exactly. They could have had him in the black suit in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
And then introduce the character of Venom in Spider-Man 4.
Yeah. Or even right at the last second of Spider-Man 3. There's a cliffhanger.
Yeah, rather than do the whole story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I rewatched it recently, and it does feel very... Like, the first half of the movie is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some bits that feel a little bit sketchy here and there, but, like, there's nothing terrible. There's nothing unlike some of the sketchier moments of the first two movies. But once you get the kind of the black suit introduced, that's where things start to head in a bizarre direction. And you get the whole kind of emo Peter and his ridiculous dance off thing.
I love all of that.
You did say you were going to defend it, actually, so please do.
Well, I mean, okay. Over the years, this film has gotten a lot of hate, or people have kind of focused on the emo Peter part of the film, and
It's because it's bad.
upon rewatching it now, because like I said when we were talking about before, I haven't watched these films in years, so maybe I just have a really weird unconscious bias. But I actually get what they were trying to do, but I think the problem with that in the film is that it happened too quickly. You know, the symbiote infecting Peter and making him more evil or embracing these darker urges he's been getting. I think it happens too immediately. And I think that's what the problem with that is. It's such a jarring change that once he puts it on, he's emo Peter instead of him just wearing the black suit.
Well, it isn't once he puts it on, because he wears it for a fair bit before that starts happening.
Not really.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. He puts it on once, and then it's already kind of made him into this darker version of himself. And then when he hides it underneath his normal clothes, he then, like, his hair gets darker, he ruffles up his fringe, and he's like,
yeah,
he's a dick to everybody.
I guess the problem for me and for a lot of people is that being darker does not necessarily equate to doing a dickish dance-off in a jazz club.
Yeah, well, I get that side of the criticism, but I'm just mean, like, I understand what they were trying to do, but it feels it was rushed. So
and badly executed.
Well, even that, but it's just, like, at the beginning of the film, I forgot how much he's already kind of being a dick to people. Like, he's kind of bad to Mary Jane. He kisses Gwen Stacy in front of her before he even gets the black suit. He's doing a lot of things that are like,
yeah,
this is bad. You're being.
He's letting his popularity go to his head a bit.
Yeah, his ego's going over his head. He's loving all the attention. He's doing things that are already showing that.
But this is incredibly true to the comic book character, which is why I like it. Like he is a bit of a cock.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine, but I agree with what you guys were saying, that if they had introduced it and then it was a thing in the next film, it would make more sense of him just getting it, and it's just fast forward to him. Yeah. That's my problem with it.
It's very much like the bit in Superman 3.
Yes,
where he gets the tar-laden kryptonite, and then all of a sudden he's drinking in bars, smashing up stuff.
Yeah,
growing a 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah, putting the leaning Tarapeza straight. And then all of a sudden he's fighting his own conscience, and it's all over in 10 minutes.
Yeah. I suppose it's the same. It's exactly the same in a way, that the idea that becoming a bad guy makes you act in a really unrealistic fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it wasn't just that Peter was being bad. It was that he was being bad in a really abnormal way.
I guess it's them thinking that that's what a nerd of that time would think is cool.
Is it, though?
go dressing up in black and going to jazz bars. That's what cool guys do, surely.
A nerd of that time would have already thought he was cool because he was talking to a girl.
Yeah.
True.
So we're all in general agreement that the third one was not the best one. Although clearly Dave has a little bit more love for it than myself and possibly Tosh.
Yeah, it's definitely not the best, but it's definitely not the worst superhero film ever made.
No, or the worst Spider-Man movie. Well, maybe the worst Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, it might be the worst Spider-Man movie.
We'll get onto that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we probably should just talk about how wonderful Spider-Man 2 is.
Oh yeah.
I was having this discussion with you, Dave, on WhatsApp, and you were saying that you prefer the first one. Now you've rewatched them. Do you want to take that back?
It's difficult because I really like. I do like number one, but I can get why people like number two more. But
well, Tosh, why don't you tell us why Spider-Man 2 is the best of the three?
Well, it's the one with the best, most fully rounded characters of all of them. They all have their individual arcs. You have a tragic villain as opposed to a psychotic villain.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, right, he's got his psychoses, but they're brought on by his arms.
Yeah,
taking over his personality. He's a good man at heart who's doing things because he's being led astray, and he has a redemption at the end.
Mm-hmm.
What Norman Osborn has nothing. He is a bit of a bastard who then becomes a bit of a psychopath, who becomes a complete psychopath, who then kills himself by trying to be even more of a psychopath.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2, you've got a tragedy villain. You've got Peter Parker Spider-Man on his own trajectory of trying to do the right thing by not having people close to him. The whole great power, great responsibility actually comes through in that film.
It does.
But he's regretting it, and he's seeing the love of his life, because they never bothered with Gwen Stacy properly, running off with J. Jonah's son. Actually, was he still J. Jonah's son in that?
It was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
I forget that, but yeah. And so
the astronaut.
It's about redemption and trying to move on with your life. Whereas the first one is very set up. It's very good setup. Willem Dafoe, fantastic, but he is just playing a psychotic bastard. There's at no point can you ever root for the villain in that one. He is an out-and-out villain.
Yeah, I mean, even before he goes mental, he's developing and selling weapons of mass destruction. He's not a good guy.
No. His first act as a supervillain is to kill off the board of governors of his company, so that they cannot stop him being a bastard anymore.
No, but yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I think it's got more of a story. The first one is it's the origin story with a villain thrown in, whereas the second one has got more of a kind of end-to-end story about Peter and his development as a superhero. It's got better banter. Spider-Man is funnier. And some really great scenes, like also the connection to New York thing really comes through in that movie. Yeah. Like that scene on the train is fantastic, where they all, he reveals his identity to them, and they all just stick his mask back on and go, "Off you go. We're not going to tell anyone."
Yeah, I did like that scene more than the one in the first one, but they kind of did that because of which I didn't really think of at the time because I was too young. But it was because of 9/11, and they wanted to have these moments of New York coming together in the film. Because apparently the Twin Towers was going to feature a lot in the first film, but obviously that all had to get taken away.
Well, it was in the trailer. The original.
It was in the trailer. It was in the trailer. So I do like that. Those parts were added. It's a great scene. My problem with number two, though, is like little nitpicks that throughout the years just have always stuck with me, for giving it the top spot above the three.
Yeah, go on then.
Okay, I'll start small and I'll get bigger with it. Alright. Number one is... Now, I don't know if this is a thing that has just happened in the comics, and they just translated it, and I just don't know any better. But when he has this problem with being Spider-Man, and his powers just switch off completely, is that a thing?
Yeah, Spider-Man no more.
But do the powers switch off, or does he just decide not to be Spider-Man anymore?
No, but it's mostly he decides not to be Spider-Man anymore. But the reason that they added that, I think that actually, I don't know for sure, but I always assumed that the reason that they added that was that there was a bit of a kind of feeling that they shouldn't have gone with the organic web shooters, because it meant that he could never run out and so on.
They were going to have normal ones, but they edited them out in the first one. Don't know why.
But I mean, yeah, that whole him quitting being Spider-Man definitely happened in the comics. I mean, it even mirrors part.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, that was around the time Kingpin came in, wasn't it? About issue 50, The Amazing Spider-Man.
I imagine you are correct. You know a hell lot more about individual issues than I do. So,
well, I have read nearly every issue of Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah,
I tried not to, but I happened to.
I'm still fighting my way through. I've got them all, not physically, but I've got I've got digital versions of them. I keep going back to it and then just dropping into different bits because I want to read a particular storyline. But yeah, I went back to this morning. In fact, I read issue 33 just because I'd been reminded of it, which is the one where he's like lifting all the machinery off of his back. So anyway, Dave, you're going to tell us.
That's one issue.
So that's one issue. Okay, I can understand. Yeah, that did seem a little bit kind of clunky, but it was all to do with him losing faith in his abilities.
I was fine with that, but to me personally, I thought it would have made more sense if he had his powers and he decided to not help people in these weird situations he kept stumbling across. Because like when he tries to save the little girl in the building that's on fire, I was like, well, you've killed the other guy who was on the top floor because you could have saved him if you had your powers. Because you would have been able to.
Well, he hasn't. No, he's just But it's about believing in yourself, and by believing in himself, his powers work.
But it's like, I feel it would be more impactful if he had his powers and he decided not to do these things.
However, that's how he got to be Spider-Man in the first place. That would negate the whole great power, great responsibility, turning his back on someone doing wrong, and his Uncle Ben getting shot. So you couldn't do that, otherwise it'd be irredeemable.
Yeah, because he'd have done the exact thing that he swore he'd never do.
Okay. The next one. Doc Ock is like one of Spider-Man's greatest villains, right?
Yep.
But almost every version of him, he's just a man with the arms, right? He's not a superpowered man.
Not himself per se, no.
So when Spider-Man punches him really hard, when he's pissed off with him, it would do a lot more damage. Even if he's pulling his punches, I love that fight scene, but it's.
But that's a thing that you see in a lot of superhero stuff, you know.
Yeah. Also, sorry.
Power levels shoot up and down all over the place all the time in order to because otherwise you would just have people punching holes through people's heads all the time. And it would just be like over, you know. I mean, if you look at how everybody's powers ramp up in any superhero movie, like I mean, look at the MCU. You look how that ramps up towards the end. You know, by the time of Endgame, things have gone absolutely crazy.
Thor can't take on Thanos, but Captain America can stand his own.
Yeah,
exactly, precisely. So people's power levels do fluctuate, and yes, you're right. Dr. Octopus is a regular human being. If Spider-Man were to punch him really hard, he would break his skull or something. But, you know, it's there for his creative license, you know what I mean?
Also,
go on.
Live in the world that I'm in, where he's actually not in control of his body anyway, the arms are. Who say Spider-Man didn't knock him out loads of times in that fight? It's fine. His arms just carried on fighting.
It's quite
I
possible,
think that should have happened. That's what I was going to say. I think that would have just solved that problem for me in this film. If that happened at least once, and the arms just carried on, I would have been fine with that.
Okay, next issue.
Next issue.
We've got plenty of other movies to talk about, so let's hear about this one.
All right, this is probably the biggest issue with the film for me.
Right.
And even after rewatching it now, I still have no idea how this worked. How on earth was this meant to play out? Harry Osborn tells Doc Ock to find Peter. Peter will tell you where Spider-Man is. Next day, Doc Ock finds Peter in a restaurant cafe and throws a car at him before knowing he's Spider-Man. Like, what was the plan there? Was he going to pick up this broken apart Peter Parker and hope he is able to point him in the right direction? What? It's an amazing scene, but I just don't understand how that was going to work.
I thought he was already aware that Peter Parker was Spider-Man.
No.
Never try and quantify the actions of the criminally insane.
Well, yes, quite.
I find that weird.
Yeah, all right, but these are little issues, aren't they? Really, come on.
Of course, they're little issues.
And there's loads of ridiculous issues in the first one as well. So, you know,
I completely agree. I do not deny it. I know these are my own little nitpicks.
Like, you know, Green Goblin's pumpkin bombs. Sometimes they vaporize you, and sometimes they just burn your face a bit.
Yeah. Sometimes Spider-Man can catch them and hold them in his body, and it's perfectly fine.
All obviously got different labels on them that we just can't see.
Oh yeah.
All right, that's one you can work your way around, but the possibility that Doc Ock was unconscious when he's fighting, no.
It's like Hawkeye with his trick arrows. They're all different. He knows which one's which.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's very true. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's what I mean. There's there's loads of little nitpicks you can pull out of any of those movies.
If you can't suspend your disbelief, there's no point watching a superhero film.
Absolutely not. No.
If you're going to get bitten by a radioactive spider, you're going to die. You're not going to get superpowers.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, I do think, William Dafoe is great in the first movie. But like you said, Galac-tosh is just he's just a psychopath. But the way he's playing him is fantastic. It's so over the top.
Yeah.
It's really good. Like, I think the strength of these movies, of the Raimi movies, is the villains.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot he was in all three films. I forgot he comes back as like Carrie hallucinates him in the house in the mirror.
Yeah, he reappears in various bits throughout all three.
Is he in the third one?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Because I definitely remember him right at the end of the second one, but I can't.
Yeah, there's a
remember
few kind of bits where, like Dave's saying, Harry sees him in the mirror.
Mm.
So he's not in it, but he's there as a kind of vision, as a kind of dream, as a kind of voice inside Harry's head, which is weird, but fine. It's like the madness is hereditary, and but yeah, I mean, I think the villains are the best thing, and I don't know if this is a controversial opinion or not, but I think the worst thing about those movies is Tobey Maguire.
Really?
I'm kind of in the middle there and saying yeah and or no.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where you're coming from. I can see
he's just the way he's really not very good at acting, at least not in these movies.
What do you mean, as Peter Parker, or as the whole thing?
As Peter Parker mostly, but also
he's the worst Spider-Man out of the lot.
Well, I mean, yeah, his banter can be a bit shit, but also his acting is just, like, as Peter Parker is really kind of unconvincing and forced a lot of the time.
Actually, I made a note about one of his quips in the first film is when he's fighting the wrestler. It's like, did your husband make the outfit for you or something?
It was 2002, all right?
2002, and wasn't that Randy Savage?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah,
I think that's his funniest quip. And it hasn't aged well, but
I'm not sure it's his funniest quip, but it's certainly one that stands out. But yeah, I mean, and obviously in the cage fight, you've got Bruce Campbell, which we should definitely mention.
Oh, yeah.
We should definitely mention Bruce Campbell, who appears in all three, obviously, because Sam Raimi
owes him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there was the rumor that he was being set up to be Mysterio.
Really?
Yes,
because that's why he's in all three.
Number 4.
And number 4, it's going to be revealed that Bruce Campbell was playing Mysterio all the time.
Oh, I see.
And was pulling the strings behind the curtains.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll never know.
I did like his Basil Fawlty-esque French guy. Absolutely ridiculous, but lots of fun. I really enjoyed that scene. But yeah, and that's what I mean. I think a lot of the supporting actors are good, but Tobey Maguire was... I mean, he's not awful, but I just find him... Of all the people who've played Peter Parker in these movies we're talking about, he's the least convincing for me.
Did you know that on set, a lot of people didn't like him either? Like, as a person, Just...
No.
There's a interview with the guy who plays Flash Thompson. In the first one, apparently the crew offered him money to accidentally punch him in the face in that fight scene in school on purpose. And he was like, I'm not doing this because I would not work in a movie again and delay the film for like a month or whatever. So, but there was a whole thing behind the scenes of people just not liking Tobey Maguire.
Well, they did try to replace him with Jake Gyllenhaal at one point.
Yes.
When he did his back in. They were quite quick to try and go, Jake, do you fancy doing this?
But I mean, that's another thing, actually. Now you're mentioning Flash. One thing that these movies, and I say to a slightly lesser extent the Amazing movies, but these movies, the kids are all too bloody old.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a scene in the first movie where it's when they're going around the science thing, where the spiders are and so on, and you've got the teacher kind of telling them to be quiet and stop chatting, and the teacher looks younger than the kids.
I think he was.
Yeah, it's got a bit of the Grease problem, isn't it? 30-year-olds playing teenagers.
Yeah, it's something I never really realized until much later, but it's very much because they're meant to be like young teenagers in the first one, aren't they? They're meant to be like
Peter's meant to be 15, 16.
Yeah, they're at high school.
Yeah.
And they're all 21, 22.
28.
Yeah, late. Yeah, they're older than that. Yeah.
Actually, yeah. Well, anything else anyone wants to say about the Raimi movies before we move on and talk about?
Of course, yes. The star, the standout star of these films, is J. Jonah Jameson.
Well, no, there's no argument with that. It's every now and again they find the perfect actor for the role.
Yeah, J.K. Simmons is fantastic in that role.
No surprise they brought him back. Spoilers.
Mm.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no, that can't be a spoiler. He's at the end of Far From Home, isn't he? Yeah.
It's certainly not a spoiler. Anybody, if you haven't watched, I mean, not that I suggest watching Far From Home, but if you haven't watched that, then you are quite behind.
Far From Home has got a lot of the Spider-Man 3s about it. It's good, but then it's got bits that go, oh, really?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll come to that in a bit. But I absolutely agree. Yeah, J.K. Simmons is fantastic. He's born to play the role, really.
I can't say anymore. It's just
his
phenomenal.
lines. It's almost like they got another scriptwriter in for him, because where the comedy coming from Spider-Man is kind of clunky and a bit crap. He is hilarious.
It's really funny.
It feels proper ripped from the comic books, his lines.
Yeah.
Angry rants.
It does a lot.
And it just sounds like Stan Lee writing it.
Yeah.
Maybe they got Stan Lee to write J. Jonah.
Even Raimi's brother is one of the new staff, right?
Yeah. It's his assistant.
This is one of his assistants. I think it's just all great. The whole newsroom.
I think of the three versions of Spider-Man we're talking about, this is the one that's closest to the Stan Lee Ditko original.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And it comes through a lot with J. Jonah. Mm-hmm. But it comes through a lot. It is very comic booky. It is kind of ridiculous, but it walks that line between comic booky and kind of almost, I think I said before, cartoonish, but it is more close to what Stan and Steve were writing in those first 30, 35 issues or so.
That's what I was saying at the beginning. That's why I really like the world of this to play around with the Spider-Man character. Because even like all the extras, like all the little weird interviews they do to people in the montages about Spider-Man and stuff, it's just... It only could exist in a cartoon or a comic, this type
Where
of...
they drag in Lucy Lawless to play a goth.
Oh yes, all of that.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a hyper reality. It's not real. We all know this is not the real world, but it's fine because and that's why you can make all those kind of suspension of disbelief leaps, because it's not grounded in any reality. It's not meant to be.
This is what always made Marvel different to DC anyway. DC tries to ground itself.
Yeah.
It's always tried to do the darker. Marvel goes, well, we're comics. Let's do a comic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, actually, this is a good segue into talking about the Amazing movies. Because those do skew more realistic. Or try to.
My optics!
we'll call them the Amazing movies or the Webb movies. Marc Webb directed movies. Mm-hmm. Basically, off the back of Spider-Man 3 being such an absolute mess, it got rebooted. There was talks about making a Spider-Man 4 for quite some time, but then it just kind of all ended up kind of falling to pieces. And Sony were pushing for a reboot, and I think Raimi, I think they wanted Raimi to make it, and he left.
Yeah, Raimi gave up.
Yeah,
he had a problem with the third one anyway.
Yeah, he didn't like. Yeah, he's quite frank about not liking the third one. He's not one of these directors who'll endlessly defend his bad movies. So what we got were the Marc Webb movies, Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2, back when we just numbered movies, didn't give them strange little taglines. But so, Galac-tosh, would you like to tell me what you think of the Marc Webb movies?
They have their moments.
Mm-hmm.
They have their also massive issues, more so than Raimi's, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My first biggest issue with it is Andrew Garfield is too good looking to be Peter Parker.
Yes.
I can't believe that he is unlikable and a complete misfit.
Yeah, that's a fair criticism.
Whereas Tobey Maguire, I completely understand that no one likes him and he doesn't fit in. Because he's just got a face that you go, oh, I really want to punch it.
Yeah, whereas, he's got resting smug face.
Yeah, because Andrew Garfield, he comes in there, he's doing cool things. He's skateboarding, he's doing photography and web designing in an age where it's, that's cool.
Yeah, and he's using Bing to do all his web searches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I think Microsoft must have given him a bit of money.
Put the finger in. Yeah, but he's meant to be a genius, but he doesn't know that's not the best browser.
Exactly.
The redeeming feature, I think, is the relationship between him and Gwen Stacy. That's great. It's much more believable than the Tobey Maguire MJ.
I absolutely agree.
Bit.
Yes.
Like when you get onto Amazing Spider-Man 2, it actually feels tragic when, spoilers, Gwen Stacy dies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I shed a tear.
Yeah.
It really touched me. Both those movies did, even though, like you say, they have more problems than the Raimi ones. Many more problems. I still find that there's more bits where I feel a bit emotional.
Yeah, because it hits the right beats.
Absolutely.
I think Andrew Garfield was the best Spider-Man of all three, but I think he's the worst Peter Parker.
Okay.
For what I said before, I don't believe him as outcast misfit.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even if they were going down the dark and broody misfit, quiet in the corner, about to pull out a rifle and shoot down the school type misfit. They didn't go down that route either. So,
yeah, he does feel a little bit too cool. I mean, I don't 100% agree because I do like his Peter Parker, but it is a departure from other versions, and it's further away from the comic than possibly either of the other two.
Yeah. Doesn't these films more based on the Ultimate comics?
Yeah, it doesn't really match him with that one though either.
No.
It doesn't, but it's like, isn't that what they were trying to do in this world? Because even with the way they did the villains and...
maybe a little bit, but not...
A lot more of it is ripped straight out of the early 100s issues of The Amazing Spider-Man. It's got the Gwen Stacy, the Captain Stacy bits.
Yeah.
They're direct riffs off the comics.
He's still a photographer. He's still... I wouldn't say it's hugely similar to the Ultimate Universe, but I don't know. I do like his Peter Parker, but I totally agree that he is a little bit too good looking, and it's a little bit more unbelievable that he would be unpopular. I just think that he's so damn charming that that I can't hold it against him.
I think that's the problem with these films on rewatching them, is that if Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was in a different set of movies, it might work a bit better, but it's like I was saying in the first one, the world really suits this Spider-Man. This world I don't think really works well for him. The way they've tried to make it all gritty and darker, and when he's Spider-Man and he makes his quips and that, it's great. I think, like, yes, when he's in the suit, he embodies Spider-Man a bit better. I don't think it works well in this. Like, in the second film, he's making jokes with the Rhino, but he's also, like, the truck is going through the town, killing many people, but he's making his quips. I'm like, well, yes, you're funny, but this is not the time.
Yeah, I think by trying to, and I'm pretty sure I've seen Marc Webb talk about this and say that he wanted to make it more grounded in reality, but by grounding it in reality, when you get the more kind of comic bookish kind of stuff happening, the kind of more kind of ridiculous stuff, like, for instance, a massive car chase, which I thought was a great scene, but it's harder to kind of disconnect yourself and go, well, sure, loads of people died or whatever. But yeah, it's over. They're kind of all over the place tonally.
Yeah.
You have some very kind of like serious stuff going on, and then you have some seriously ridiculous stuff happening, especially with the villains. I mean, I'd say conversely to Raimi, here the villains are the weak point, and the hero and his love interest, Gwen Stacy, Emma Stone, they're the strength of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the lizard, other than going a bit Brundlefly, that seems to be the only motivation of it. I'm doing this because I really want to get my arm back, but I'm doing all these experiments. I know it's a bit wonky, but they're taking the front. Go, okay, so keeping true to the comics here. But then he just goes Brundlefly.
Yeah, he goes, I'm a lizard, so now everyone should be lizards.
Yeah.
Why?
What?
'Cause?
Reasons.
When I rewatched it, I forgot that the reason he took the formula in the first place is because this executive or head of the estate for Osborn is telling him, we're going to just give it to a bunch of people in the hospital somewhere. We're doing the trials now. And he's like, no, we should take the proper steps. I was like, well...
And so immediately the proper step is inject it into your arm.
Yeah, I mean...
Exactly, yeah, he goes, no, we should be doing this the proper way. I'm going to quit if we don't do it the proper way. And then the guy goes, well, if you quit, we're just going to do it anyway. So his immediate response is, well, in that case, I'm going to inject it into my arm. Okay. Maybe if Peter's father had done that, then he'd be Spider-Man.
Maybe.
Because he left the project for the same kind of reasons.
He left.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then you've got, obviously, the worst example of this is Electro and his, I hate Spider-Man because he forgot my birthday.
Yes.
I don't know.
Oh, and he
why?
also turned out not to be his friend.
Yeah.
Like he imagined he was, because he happened to save him once.
Yeah. Yeah. And even though he was trying to talk him down during that scene in Times Square, he was having none of it. His motivations are so flimsy. It's insane.
Yeah.
That's so weird. That whole Max Dillon thing, that whole pre-Electro bit, it's just, why did they make that choice?
The comb over and the teeth.
Yes.
Even the whole crazy apartment scene, it's like, why is this even here? Why even include it? Like, it's so...
I've got 4 words to say to you which explain this.
Okay.
Alex Kurtzman, Roberto Orca, or Orci.
Say no more.
Yeah.
Is that the people who wrote it?
The two of the worst writers in Hollywood.
Okay.
were brought on to this they didn't write Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Okay, yeah.
But they were brought in for Amazing Spider-Man 2, and they are franchise destroyers.
Yeah. Their name on something is a mark of the quality you should expect.
Yeah. They wrote Transformers. They wrote Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. They wrote Star Trek Into Darkness. They wrote The Mummy.
Oh my goodness. This is not a good CV.
I know, but yet they still get work. Alex Kurtzman is now in charge of Star Trek, and he's made Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard, which are awful. But hey,
wow.
He keeps getting that work. He's coming in and ruining things.
He must have a dossier on someone.
He has to, yeah. He's got some secrets, yeah.
That makes sense then, because there is, like I said, it's been a long time since I've watched these films. There is a big difference between the first one and the second one.
Yes. I mean, the first one isn't great, but the second one is truly awful.
Yes.
There is a reason why Sony went running to
Yes.
Marvel.
But I mean, there are some good bits. There's some good bits in the second one. Like the crime fighting scene that you're talking about, the opening of Spider-Man 2, I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really good. Where you've got the guy who will later become Rhino driving that armored car. That's a good scene, and Spider-Man's being genuinely funny.
Mm-hmm.
He's very good. He's very like Galac-tosh was saying. He's a good Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. He's really good with the quips. Really good with the kind of all the kind of comedy whilst fighting. Mm-hmm. But like that scene's great. And then in the first one, you've got the bit on the bridge where he saves that kid, and that's fantastic. Like where he takes the mask off, and that's just that's Spider-Man / Peter Parker down to a T.
And my personal favourite bit of all of them is the bit where he's trying to save Gwen Stacy, and you see his web reach out like a hand to try and grab her. I personally think that's the best of all the Spider-Man films. That is my standout of it. It's just got pathos and a good visual trick going on.
To be honest, when I saw that, I thought it was a bit cheesy, but like on rewatching it, it doesn't look quite as much like a hand as I remember it looking.
No,
but it does kind of look a little bit like a hand, doesn't it? But yeah, I mean, but those two were fantastic. I mean, they were in a relationship in real life, which helped.
Yeah.
But I mean, the same is true of the current Spider-Man, and I wouldn't say that that's the strength of the current one.
What, he's going out with Ned? Because that's the obvious strongest relationship in that film.
Yeah, absolutely, the bromance. But yeah, no, those two are fantastic, and it's believable, and she's fantastic as Gwen Stacy, really good. And like I think Dave, you were you shared some kind of meme with me about Mary Jane Watson.
Oh yeah,
in the first movies, and how she's always just kind of the damsel in distress.
Yeah.
And I think more so than any of the other love interests, Gwen is positioned well as kind of like being on his level, but not being part of the team, as it were.
Oh yeah, I know the one you mean now. It wasn't so much the kidnapping part. It was just Mary Jane, the character in the Raimi films. I just didn't like. I remember not liking her as a child, and even now rewatching it, it's like there's a lot of points in those films where it's.
You see, I don't
have any sympathy for her when it gets.
I don't agree because Peter messes her about so much.
She does the same to him. It's like tit for tat.
I don't think so.
No. I mean, like
no. I'm more on her side than his.
Yeah, I think everything she does is pretty much valid. He runs hot and cold with her so much.
But there is like at least.
And she's not going to know why, is she?
There's one.
He ruins her wedding.
Yeah, he ruins her wedding. Yeah. Exactly.
There is at least once in every of those Raimi films, she's trying to get Peter to either kiss her, to admit that he loves her, or be with her while she's already dating someone or is already engaged to someone. Like, she does it as well. Like, if you want to say they're both terrible, that's fine. But
No, well, no, I don't think. I think that's. She knows that he loves her and she loves him.
Yeah.
But he keeps running hot and cold with her, so she gets on with her life. What do you want her to do? Just hang around and wait?
No, I don't. I would just.
Why wait so long?
Why is she always with? I could understand if she was single or looking to someone, but she's already with someone, and if Peter says no, she goes to this person.
I suppose because she's an attractive actress.
Oh, okay.
I suppose she's not going to hang around forever for him, and she did try several times. You know, I mean, he gets together with her and dumps her like 3 or 4 times.
Once a film.
Yeah, once a film. It's like yeah.
Yeah, but okay. So...
Oh yeah, we're together. Oh, but actually, I hate you. Goodbye.
But okay, all right. Let's look at it a different way. Like you said with Gwen, she does the same thing in the second film. She's sick of it. She's sick of with Andrew pretending to want to be with her, then focusing on what her dad said and going back and forth. And she's like, I'm ending it. I'm done. I can't deal with you.
But Dave, the difference there is that she knows he's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Mary Jane finds out halfway through. That's fine.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't find out till the end of the second movie.
Yeah, okay, fine. She has an inkling throughout all of the films, but when she finds out...
No.
Also,
that doesn't make it any different.
Tobey Maguire didn't promise anyone's dying dad that they won't make her, the love of their life, who happens to be his daughter, not be in any harm ever again.
Yeah, and then she does die.
Yeah, so he was right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Ghost Dad was right, I guess. Because Ghost Dad does come up a lot, doesn't he?
But that's what I mean. It's a more, I suppose, again, like I was saying, the more realistic take in Amazing Spider-Man is it's a more realistic relationship than in the Raimi.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree.
But I honestly don't think. I think in the Raimi movies, Peter's the dick, not Mary Jane.
Okay.
I'd go with that.
My optics!
What do you guys think about the whole Uncle Ben death in the Webb movies and how that, well, I mean, how it played out is one thing, but it's how Peter went on to only go after guys with blonde hair and a possible tattoo on their arm? That was really weird. That's how he became Spider-Man, is just to...
Well, that was them trying to do something different, because Raimi did the actual comic version.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's a riff, but...
Yeah, so that's what I want to know. So what did you guys think of that at that time? Like, what is...
I think it's fine. I think that, again, it's kind of like, I imagine Marc Webb or whoever, I can't remember who wrote the first one. I think that they were thinking, well, how would this play out in reality? Would Spider-Man, or would, Peter immediately chase down the guy within like 24 hours and get it all out of the way? Or would he have to search for this guy? And maybe we'll string it out a bit longer and have this guy kind of be like a something he's looking for while he's learning his powers.
But he never finds him, and it's not brought up again. I mean, I'm fine with that, but I just wanted to know what you guys thought of it, because it's where it brought it to light when they're having the dinner with the Stacys, and the captain brings it up, and he actually lists it out, and it's like, well, I never thought of it that way. Yes, he's only going after one type of person. He's not actually helping the little people yet. He's just...
Yeah, because he's traumatized. He feels responsible for his uncle's death, obviously, and this is his way of dealing with it. It's trauma.
What do you think about the way Uncle Ben died in these films? Because this has always been a thing that people have like...
He gets shot.
Why did he do what he did in that moment? Because from his perspective, a guy was running in front of him, he falls over, a gun falls out of his pocket. There is no danger. He doesn't know he's robbed anything. It's fine. But he runs for the gun preemptively and gets shot.
Guns fall out of people's pockets all the time.
Maybe in America, I don't know, but I
don't think they do.
More likely in America.
Well, I mean, it doesn't bother me, possibly because I'm just so familiar with the whole story of Uncle Ben's death that it's just got to be told in some kind of way. It's basically, he's a role model. Ben is someone who believes in doing the right thing and being responsible, and that's why he stops this guy.
It's just an A to B thing you have to have happen.
Yeah.
You have to have Uncle Ben there and Uncle Ben dead.
Yeah.
To have Spider-Man.
Unless it's the MCU.
Where they don't broach it at all because they've done it twice and they can't be bothered to do it again. And everyone goes, right, do we really want to kill... It's like DC keep killing off the bloody Waynes.
Yes. It's that problem.
Yeah, it's true. But I mean, yeah, I don't know if I have anything more to say. I mean, I have a soft spot for the Marc Webb movies, but they are the ones that have the most issues, definitely.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah. But there's some really good bits. It's just unfortunate that so many of those really good bits are buried under some truly terrible writing.
What did you think about the ending to the films? Just one thing I noticed is that both films kind of end in the same way.
With a funeral.
Not so much the funeral, it's the in the first film, Uncle Ben...
They both end with a Stacy dying.
No, well, yes, but no. That Uncle Ben had left him a message while he was looking for him the night he gets shot, and he's too upset to listen to it the first time, and he listens to it at the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second film, he listens to Gwen's speech that he missed earlier in the film because he was late, and he listens to that at the end.
Maybe it's just because Marc Webb only knows one way how to make a movie.
Yeah. It's like Marvel with the giant space laser.
Yeah, exactly. How do we end this movie? Giant space laser? Okay, great.
It's not that it's a bad thing. It's just something I noticed when we were watching it. That's like,
yeah. I mean, that's something we should talk about. That the one thing that Amazing Spider-Man does, which I actually think is quite... I think when I first watched them, I wasn't into it, but now I quite like, is that they try to delve into like his parents' history a little bit more. And that's something that hasn't been done in... You know, it doesn't generally get done in the cartoons, doesn't generally get done in the movies. It was nice to have that other part in there. Mm-hmm. Because I mean they were secret agents in the comic book, weren't they, Tosh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
sadly.
you know, it was there. It is something you can draw upon. And it was interesting to kind of like rope his dad in. And there was wasn't there like a post-credit scene on the second one with his dad?
No, that was with the Sinister Six, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was. Oh no, there was a scene on the DVD, on the deleted scenes, where Peter Parker is at Gwen's grave and his dad turns up and he's not dead.
Oh, I can't say I've seen that.
Yeah, look it up.
But then he wasn't dead in the comics.
Yeah.
He's got a sister in the comics who may or may not be his sister.
Yeah. But yeah, I think what they did was I think they pulled that scene because, well, I don't know why they pulled that scene. Possibly because they didn't think they were going to be making a sequel in the end.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure as soon as the reviews came out for that one, they went, ooh.
Because I think that scene was setting up Amazing Spider-Man 3.
Oh. Yeah, it's an odd scene. Rewatching it out of context.
But it would have been interesting to see where that would have went.
We might find out, yeah.
To be honest, there's no forgiving. I mean, we haven't even spoken about the Green Goblin. There's no.
Oh, that's villains just worth skimming over in the entire two films. They're pointless.
The basement of backpacks, all the different origin story backpacks, they're all there. Different villains.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, but they were clearly Sony did want to set up like a Sinister Six kind of situation.
They were trying to set up their own little Spider-Verse, weren't they?
Yeah, they were absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, they almost did, and then Amazing Spider-Man 2 was such a turkey.
Because there's deleted scenes of, is it Felicia? Is it
Yeah.
Yeah.
the lady who's Jyn Erso, right? That's her?
Yeah, it's what's her face from Star Wars, yeah.
She was meant to have more part in the film, and they were going to have a Black Cat spin-off, and...
No. Oh, no.
Well, she just played the character Felicia Hardy. I don't think they knew whether they were going to go Black Cat with her or not.
Yeah, I'm getting confused. I'm thinking of Raimi. Spider-Man 4 was there was a kind of script / treatment written for Spider-Man before they rebooted, and that was going to have the Vulture in it. And Felicia Hardy was going to be in it, but she was going to be the Vulturess. She was going to be like a female vulture.
Vulturess sounds like a female Electro.
Yeah, it does. Vulturess, not Vulturess. But yes, it does. But anyway, that I digress.
This film was when that big Sony hack happened. All these emails leaked out.
It was after that.
After it.
That was after this film coming up. This is the film that triggered Sony into really wanting Marvel's help.
Yeah.
And then that's when the emails went back and forwards, and it was Harry Osborn's film, The Interview, that caused the entire hack to happen, allegedly.
Oh, yes.
Please don't come after me, North Korea. But allegedly, that's where that happened, and so that was all after this. Basically, it would appear that a certain country of a certain political persuasion was not very happy with a film that may or may not have starred Seth Rogen and Dave Franco. Not James Franco, not Dave. Dave is innocent. They they might have then hacked the company responsible for making said film and leaked all of their emails over the internet, which then turned out that one of the biggest reveals was begging letters from Sony to Marvel of going, help, please help, you're our only hope. In the wake of how bad reception for Amazing Spider-Man 2 was.
And also how well the MCU, how well that was starting to go.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, at that point, had Avengers been out by that point?
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, and Avengers was massive.
There's talks of this being part of that universe at the time, right? Wasn't there, like, a big thing about the Oscorp Tower was going to be in the Avengers film, in the landscape, in the big New York battle?
Marvel always pushed for everything they could possibly get off everyone.
Yeah.
But they always said, like Fox and Sony always went, no, they're ours. You sold them to us, no takes backs.
Yeah, Marvel have been desperate to have those rights back for a long time.
So desperate that Disney bought an entire studio.
Yep. I mean, I went to the Kapow Comic Con in London, and there was a panel with right, I'm not going to be able to pronounce his name right, so I'm going to ask Galac-tosh to do so. What was the name of the editor-in-chief of Marvel at the time?
Oh, Joey Q?
Yep, that guy.
Joe Crusader.
That's it. So he was heading up this panel, and they were talking quite frankly about all of the movie rights, and they were very clear that they totally regretted selling them off and desperately wanted them back. All of them, like including Punisher, all that stuff. They all wanted all of that back.
But remember, if they hadn't done that, Marvel wouldn't exist. So it's catch-22, really. If they hadn't done that...
Yeah, they needed the money, didn't they?
They would have gone bankrupt.
Yeah,
and Marvel would have gone completely. And then we wouldn't have the MCU that they're regretting having to set it off to come back to it. And it's... Yeah, we could get into that circular argument all day.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I mean, I imagine when they got those begging letters from Sony, they were probably rubbing their hands in glee.
Yeah.
My optics!
The upshot was eventually Marvel and Sony came to an agreement, which allowed them to collaborate on the Spider-Man movies and on the MCU side of things. So everyone finally got what they wanted: Spider-Man in the MCU.
Way!
Dave, tell us why this is a good thing, and then I'll tell you why it's not.
Spoilers.
Okay, so from my view and perspective on Spider-Man and the way, people in college, uni were talking about it, and the way we all kind of had this idea of the world the MCU has built with these superheroes, what it would be like if Spider-Man was in it. And to that point, it was Garfield who was Spider-Man, and it was the idea of having him in that world. And, yes, it could work. Maybe we'd have to brush up and understand why these people haven't been around all this time. Fine. But when they had Tom Holland in Civil War, and the way they introduced Tom Holland, and the look, him as Peter Parker, all of it, at that time, I was over the moon. I thought it was a great way of introducing Spider-Man. And even at that point, I thought that was it. I thought, well, he's there. He may pop up again in a big film. We won't be seeing him for a little while now because they don't own him per se. I thought that would have been... and that would have been enough for me, to be honest. I thought his introduction in Civil War was enough, and he would have been brought in little bits if needed. I didn't think he was going to get a movie off the bat like that.
Well, he was always going to have Sony movies, as he has had.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I suppose...
And they still are Sony movies. They're not Marvel movies per se.
They are Sony.
Yes.
Yeah. They're made in association with Marvel Studios. They're not made by Marvel Studios.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know if anyone envisaged him playing quite such a big part in Infinity War and Endgame as he did.
No. Not at the time, no way. No.
But, I mean, I think it's good that they got him into the MCU. I just think they got him in kind of a bit late. And unfortunately, because the MCU have been ramping up towards Infinity War for all of this time, for like a decade previous to this happening, pretty much, all of a sudden he's just thrust in there, and he had to they had to just basically go, all these things that Spider-Man's about, we have to dump those and just have him in here as Iron Man Jr. I mean, I thought Homecoming was a great movie, but I think after that, things went wrong.
Well, think of it around the other way around. Did you really want another Spider-Man origin?
No, not necessarily, but I wouldn't mind a little bit more backstory to him, and also a little bit more of him. I thought Homecoming was a good movie. It was a good starting point, but I felt that we should have then moved on to him kind of like continuing to learn to be a superhero, less interference from Tony Stark, and filling in the gaps of why he's a crime fighter, and fleshing out his supporting cast and bringing together his coterie of villains. But instead, they just kind of launch him headlong into an intergalactic space adventure where he's not really crime fighting, he's just fighting alien monsters. And then he gets deleted from existence. And it's just like the whole Spider-Man movies have been hijacked by this big event.
So much like the comics, then.
Yeah, yes. But I mean, obviously, the comics, though, the big events hijacked Spider-Man after he'd been properly developed, if you know what I mean.
True. No, true. I was being flippant.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. I don't think he had the room to grow, because I think Homecoming is a very good movie, but Far From Home is a terrible movie, and...
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as terrible.
I don't think it's that bad.
It's boring. I mean, I
think it's got a ludicrous premise.
I can't think of much good to say about it, to be honest.
Jake?
No. Jake Gyllenhaal's not particularly
Really?
good. No.
I thought he was great.
It's a villain with reasons of. It's basically got exactly the same reasons as the Incredibles. It's someone who was just a bit let down by people, and going, "I'm going to be a supervillain now."
It's another one. It's a movie that feels like it's there as a stepping stone to something else, rather than being a movie on its own.
It is. It's filler. It's a bridge.
Yeah.
It's how do you get to be there for No Way Home?
And that's what every Spider-Man appearance has been, excluding Homecoming. It's been, we've got Spider-Man in here because we need something to happen that then will lead on to another movie later. Not, this is a movie about Spider-Man. That's my feeling on it anyway.
Yeah, well, see, this is. I get what you're saying, but I get why it's happening because of this universe. Like, the other two iterations of Spider-Man could make that work because it was focused solely in New York and it was just about his story. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, and I get why that helps to build the character of Spider-Man. But in this world, it's been established that he's not alone in terms of being a hero. There's other heroes, be it fighting galactic threats and fighting aliens and whatnot, but they're like, the world is accustomed to having more than one hero in it.
But that was...
The town doesn't just rely on Spider-Man, it has all these other heroes that are there.
Agreed. But that was true in the comics, and they still managed to make it work.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's even though that's a thing in the comics, it's different in the films because they have to account for all of that. Like, even why, like, what are they called now? The Netflix series shows, when they happened, they had to be in a world where the Shatari attack happened and New York was decimated, and these events are the little people on the ground of that world.
But they were still able to produce a proper story that wasn't completely affected by that.
Mostly.
Because those stories were not going to affect the bigger world, but Spider-Man stories will.
Why?
Or at least introduce stuff.
Why?
I didn't write it.
Spider-Man's generally been considered a street-level hero.
Yeah.
Like Luke Cage, like Daredevil. They're contemporaries. They fill the same niches.
Mm.
Spider-Man is ludicrously overpowered to be a street-level hero.
But his villains are just crooks.
Yeah.
His villains in this are not... This is my problem with the MCU Spider-Man, is his villains are not really his villains. They're they're Iron Man's villains. All the people that he's faced up until No Way Home, and even then, they're not even really his villains either. It's not his villains that he's fighting.
Well, that's because of the toxic influence of Tony Stark in the MCU.
Yes,
Tony Stark is the ultimate big bad in the MCU.
Yeah, he's the villain of the whole thing.
And even that, I know that's a problem, and I don't personally like it. I think he should have more villains that not necessarily connected to him, but are, they're his arch enemy. They're the ones who want to go after Spider-Man. He's not. Yeah. They don't want to go after Iron Man, and he gets in the way.
Well, that's what I mean. I think so. That's what my problem is with it. I mean, I do like the MCU, and I do like some of the stuff with Spider-Man in, but it's so intrinsically tied into the bigger picture and the bigger story that's going on that you bypass all that stuff of Spider-Man being a kind of an outcast and not taken seriously by all the other superheroes in the universe as he wasn't in the comic books. Like, he tried to join the Fantastic Four and they told him to go away.
Well, he did ask how much they paid.
Exactly, because he was a cock.
To be fair, the Fantastic Four did want to sort of take him in, but he asked how much they paid, so he walked away because he was looking for a job.
Loads of the other superheroes in the Marvel universe, in the comics, they were aware of him, but they thought he was a bit of a joke.
Mm-hmm.
But so you bypass all that, and instead of having this kind of geeky, unpopular, slightly cocky nerd who becomes a kind of street level superhero, who has all these real world issues like finishing school, looking after his frail, poverty stricken aunt, who is alone because he didn't act to stop the death of Uncle Ben. Instead, you've kind of got him kind of going off on a kind of intergalactic jaunt with his Avengers pals, and he's like a popular, well-liked superhero out in space with his surrogate dad Tony, wearing a bloody supersuit.
But that's because the MCU, unlike the comics, is essentially the entire cinematic universe is the crossover event, where they've forgotten to do the individual series that ran before that, before the series got taken over by the crossover. We're only reading the crossover events.
Yeah, they jumped straight to the crossover events.
Yeah.
They started with some small solo movies, but it very quickly ramped up.
Yeah. It's because it got really, like in the first phase, you had all the introductions to the main Avengers, and then they had the Avengers. And then they started to introduce more characters, and they had their sequel films. And in those sequel films, there were times where it was like, well, why aren't we calling Tony? Or in like Iron Man 3, why isn't Tony getting help from Cap?
Yeah.
Or S.H.I.E.L.D. or like there was times where it was like, well, this you're starting to take you out of the film because you've already introduced characters who are not really like tied down, that they can't help these people in their time of need.
Because they're busy.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. You can explain it. You can explain it with they're busy.
Wait, Iron Man 3, he needed some help. Cap was running away from Hydra.
Exactly.
But it got to a point where it kind of wasn't believable that all of these scenarios, if they were going to be world-ending scenarios, like
that's the problem. You see, Spider-Man's problems are not world-ending scenarios.
No, the only ones they should ever end are his own world.
Yeah, which is why I like Homecoming, because the baddie is just stealing weapons and technology. He's just a crook. Okay, he is kind of connected to Tony Stark, but only tangentially, really.
But he's also connected to Peter Parker because he's his love interest dad.
Yeah, which works really well. Yeah. But then in the second movie, you've got a guy who's got a vendetta against Tony Stark and wants these bloody glasses. And by this point, Peter's become the new Iron Man. In fact, that's what he says in the video at the end. He says he wants to be the new Iron Man. He wants all of Iron Man's technology to himself.
Yeah, I don't like that either. I don't get that at all.
But that's because the whole film's just a bridge.
It is.
It's a bridging episode.
That's my problem. I don't have a problem with MCU Spider-Man per se. I just don't think he's anything like the Spider-Man I know and love. Therefore, I have less interest in him. Which is why, we may as well get onto it, No Way Home does a lot to address that problem.
Yes.
And I'm re-interested in what might happen after this, because No Way Home is basically a soft reboot of Spider-Man.
It's not even that soft.
No.
It's quite a hard reboot.
It makes the other appearances of Spider-Man in the MCU feel more like a very long origin story to get to where he is now. Like he needed to, he couldn't really do the normal beats of Spider-Man because he exists in this universe, so he has to do it a different way. Like, it all had to lead up to something different for him to become Spider-Man.
That is all because Marvel do not have Spider-Man.
Hmm.
Marvel have borrowed Spider-Man.
Yes.
And this is all they can do with it.
Yeah.
They couldn't do an origin because Sony, for all we know, could have gone, hold on. No, we own the origin. We own the origin stories to Spider-Man. You're borrowing him. He is a subpart. He's a sub-character for you to borrow.
Yeah.
That is also the other problem. Because that was the big thing with Far From Home, wasn't it? That the deal ended and he was not going to be in any movies for like a whole week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then came back.
But that movie exists to kind of move... Again, it's not a movie. It's a bridge between movies, again. And it's also a way of kind of going, just celebrating, oh, look, we've got all of the Spider-Man villains in here and all the Spider-Men. Isn't it great?
Look at all the Hot Toys. Come buy the Hot Toys.
They can now sell you 3 Spider-Man figures.
Yeah, exactly.
And go, they're all different.
In 9 different costumes.
Nah, just the same one in different boxes.
I know that Dave wants to talk about costumes later.
Oh, I do.
But like, yeah, I did enjoy No Way Home, but I enjoyed it because of the last act and where it left us.
I did like the way that everyone got a result, everyone's resolution.
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire didn't really get one, but he got stabbed, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
But Andrew Garfield got a resolution.
Yes, he did. Yes, he got to save the girl.
Yeah. Being the one who literally got their story cut the shortest.
Yes. And there was even a bit... Because, I mean, these movies do try and be a bit meta, don't they? And there was a bit where they kind of give him validation, don't they? Like, he's... like, I think...
Yeah, telling him he's amazing.
Yeah, Tobey Maguire's telling him he's amazing. Yeah, it's like, no, you're amazing. No, don't let everybody put you down as being the worst Spider-Man or whatever.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, but I mean that's the thing. They do that a lot in the MCU, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's not. But they do. There's a lot of kind of like jokey, wink to the audience kind of stuff. About almost kind of like, oh, comic book silly guys.
Yeah, well, it's because they're trying not to be DC.
Yeah, and that's, maybe being too earnest can be a problem, absolutely.
What they're doing is working for them.
Yeah, but I mean, No Way Home is a good way of kind of like putting all the toys away and putting everybody back, resetting the chessboard, as it were.
Yeah.
I like the way... Go on. No, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, it's one of those films where it's really, it's difficult to think about too much because you start to overthink it.
Oh, the plot makes no sense. It's complete nonsense. It doesn't make any sense.
The plot about that I have a problem with. If they're meant, all these villains have been snatched out of the moment just before they die.
Mm.
Although a couple of them don't die. Just saying.
And one of them doesn't even know he's Peter Parker.
Yep. And so, where are the Spider-Men snatched from? Are they snatched from the point just before they die?
Well, no, because they
come from the current time.
Yeah, they come from...
but why are they being snatched from then? Because the rest of them, they pointedly say, are snatched just before they die.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, okay, we're getting people... Everybody who knows who Peter is and Electro are brought to his reality. And if they've died, they come from just before they died. But if they haven't, then they come from now. For some reason.
Yes, I thought it was...
But then Reese Fans was cured. So why is Kurt Connors there as the Lizard, apart from the fact Reese Fans couldn't turn up for filming?
Well, he didn't. Yeah, he didn't die, and
Sandman didn't die.
No,
he drifted off in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think they were coming in as the points that they died. I thought they were coming in as the... It's meant to be.
They say it very clearly in the movie. If they hadn't have said it in the movie, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Yeah. But they did.
I thought that they were turning up at the points where they realised that Peter was Spider-Man,
Well, Sandman
or vice versa.
Sandman would have known, oh, look, that's Spider-Man without his mask on.
Yeah. That's it. You won't know who he is. You wouldn't know he's Peter Parker, which is the premise.
And then, even then, when he knows, oh, I killed your uncle, he still didn't know who he killed or who his uncle.
Mm.
Maybe he found out in the years after because he didn't die. Maybe they hang out and go for coffee now. Maybe they're all right with each other.
Well,
because when he sees Spider-Man, when he sees Tom, he's like, "It's me, it's Flint." You know, like we're all pals.
Well,
Yeah,
to be fair, Flint Marko is one of those characters that has flip-flopped.
Yeah, he's not really a villain. I mean, he has been a villain at times, but he's more of an anti-hero, really.
It's more a merc.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to do right by his family, but he is a criminal.
Even in the films, yeah.
I think he was even an Avenger at one point.
He was an Avenger for a while, yeah. That was around about the time I started reading Avengers, actually. I don't know where I picked it up, but I picked up a comic from... Again, it will be the newsagents before the hairdressers. I would have picked up an Avengers comic, and yeah, that was the time when Sandman was in the Avengers. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I honestly, the logic of those movies, especially now that I went back and watched all the old movies, it doesn't hold any water whatsoever.
It's like any parallel universe stroke time travel film.
It is, yeah.
The minute you try to pull it apart, it ceases to exist.
Yeah, because this stuff is so theoretical and so kind of silly that it's quite hard to like come up with a kind of solid working theory. But I do think that the writers of No Way Home didn't do themselves any favours by making such specific claims as, oh, they were plucked just before their death, because by curing them, I think Dr. Octopus realised realised right at the end of Spider-Man 2 what was happening, and he sacrificed himself, so it would have made no difference. Yeah. Yes, it might have made a difference with Norman Osborn, but Norman Osborn was a bastard anyway.
Yeah.
So what? We cure him of being a mad bastard, and he's just a bastard. And then Electro, well, for a start, he didn't know who Spider-Man was, so why is he even there? But
and why has he got a completely different look?
Yeah.
Admittedly, it's better than what he had, but
apparently he just looks different in this universe for some reason. No one else does.
It's because electricity's different in that universe. It's all different. Electricity's different.
Yes, because electricity was purple in that universe and yellow in the MCU.
I remember electricity looking very different in Amazing Spider-Man. And in that case, why isn't sand different in this universe?
Yeah.
It's because he can't. That's why he doesn't look human, because he can't adjust to this sand.
No, that's just because Thomas Hayden Church couldn't turn up for filming.
That's the real reason.
He literally phoned his part in. Same with Reese Ifans.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he appeared for like a second, didn't he? And
yeah.
But that's just from the film. It's not.
Yeah, that's just straight out of Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, they've just flipped that scene.
Yeah, the whole premise of how they're going to fix this problem by curing everybody is just dumb. I mean, even Doctor Strange points out how pointless it is. Mm. And yeah, like they say, oh, we're gonna cure them. Why doesn't Andrew Garfield go? But I did cure him.
He does actually at one point say, I've done it once.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just going to do it again. But yeah.
I mean,
wasn't it also explained in the whole time travel stuff in Endgame that whatever you do in the past doesn't affect the future?
This is not a time travel.
This isn't time travel though. This is just parallel universe.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, but it is time. But it is time travel when you're referring to the villains.
Yeah, but this one, a wizard does it.
Yeah.
It just comes down to that. A wizard
exactly.
Does it.
And this is the problem. It's too bloody confusing.
It's not science, this one. It's magic.
No. Yeah, I think the problem with this is, upon watching No Way Home again, I forgot how quickly Doctor Strange does the spell. Like, I feel like he should have talked to him through the steps of what this will do, or what the implications of it were. He just started doing it straight away, and then.
But he is a bit reckless, isn't he?
We also might find out that's not proper Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, with the
that's
multi-
another thing.
Let's leave that to see if that gets
The
explained.
multiverse of madness and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
that one could come out of the woodwork as being a good reason why he did that.
And it's Sam Raimi's return to Marvel.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully Bruce Campbell.
Yeah,
Oh
it will
my
be
gosh,
interesting. Yeah.
It's not a Sam Raimi film without Bruce Campbell in it, so...
So, anything else anyone wants to say about Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man?
I think, actually, he has got Spider-Man in the MCU has got a very specific arc. It's about someone desperate longing for a father figure, which is also why he's tied so close to Iron Man. If you watch it, all the way through it, he refers to Tony Stark as Mr. Stark. He's always very respectful, very, very sort of like paternal instinct towards, well, not towards him, but relating to him as a paternal figure. Until right at the second when he realizes he's about to die, and he goes Tony to him. It's like, and that's when he starts breaking down because he realizes he's lost his father figure again. As
much as I often deride his status as Iron Lad or Tony Stark Jr. and finding that mildly irritating, I do think that, regardless of what I think about it, that relationship is played out quite well and works.
And it is also the whole reason why Endgame happens. Why Tony Stark actually goes, after going no, I can't do time travel because A, it's ridiculous, and B, I'll lose what I've got. And then what causes him to do that is realising, well, I have lost what I got. I've got a chance not to bring back that boy again, who was a surrogate son to him.
Which I mean, there's a lot of points where it does feel like Tony needs to kind of realise he's a massive hypocrite, and
yeah, but Tony Stark's entire arc is about redemption.
It is absolutely,
and trying to be better in the world.
He finally does the right thing and kills himself.
Well, he does the right thing by killing himself. Let's switch that round a bit.
I'm only kidding.
But a man who starts off pure self-sacrifice and doesn't care, and very selfish man, as even showed by the flashbacks in Iron Man 3, of just how self-centered he was.
Yeah.
Literally sacrificed everything because he realizes that there's more than just him being the center of the universe.
Yeah, it's a shame that he had to go through all that to get there, but yeah, absolutely, he does come to the realization.
Because I just look at the MCU, particularly up until the end of Phase 3, as it's Iron Man's story.
It is. It absolutely started with Iron Man.
It's just an Iron Man film. The whole thing, no matter who's in it, it's an Iron Man film. And it's all about Tony Stark's redemption. The whole thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is, and which is why I tend to gravitate towards, these days anyway, the movies that are less about that, like the Thor Ragnarok or the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff, or stuff that's not as tied in. I didn't really like Civil War. I didn't hate it.
No, I'm not a big fan of Civil War.
But it felt like, Tony Stark is invading Captain America's movie, and now he's invading everyone's movie, and now every movie's about him.
But then, as you bring up Civil War, the comics Civil War, the first one, not Civil War 2, ignore that one; it's rubbish.
Yep, it is.
That sets up the whole Tony Stark father figure to Spider-Man is out in the whole bringing it round again.
It does.
It's the whole. They've just taken that stretch out of it, and that's the bit of the Spider-Man story that the MCU have told.
Yeah, it's just that obviously in the comic books, Spider-Man is 20-something or 30, and he's married, and it's quite a different situation.
Oh yeah, I never said it's perfect translation.
It's not quite a father figure thing. It's more that at that point in Peter's life, he needs someone.
Maybe it's more a protege thing.
Yeah, at that point in Peter's life in the comic books, he needs some help, and Tony's there to offer it. But yeah, I know, I think you're right. Actually, I mean the whole MCU, which let's. I mean, obviously it still continues, but let's say it ends at Endgame. That whole thing is very much. I mean, it becomes over time all about Tony. Yeah, more so as it goes on. But it is very much about him, which is why he is. I mean, it's a lot to do with the fact that everyone just loved Robert Downey Jr. in that role, really.
Which is also why all the Phase 4 we've seen so far is about grief. All of it so far is about grief and losing people.
Yeah, it's meta. It's meta again because it's about grieving over losing the MCU that they once had, and having to kind of come up with how the hell are we going to keep this going.
WandaVision is about grief for losing the love of your life.
Yeah.
Winter Soldier and Falcon and the Winter Soldier is about grieving in a world without Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
Loki, it's about grieving about himself. Then you get Black Widow. Maybe the grief bit, but that's set before Tony Stark dies, so
yeah,
we don't worry about that. Shang-Chi's about losing a father and losing your place in society and your family.
And Hawkeye is about Christmas and Russian gangsters.
And Hawkeye is about trying to work out why Iron Man was celebrated as being in the Battle of New York. Why Ant-Man, was in the Battle of New York. Interestingly, I think that's because he was there. And because he was there in Endgame, he might have just gone off and done some side missions while he's there. Someone spotted him there and went, oh, Ant-Man was here.
Yeah.
And I think retroactively, they've just kind of slotted Ant-Man in there, even though it's the wrong Ant-Man at the time. They've gone, well, he was here. We saw him. Oh, yeah.
Well, we've got to be careful here because Dave's not watched Hawkeye yet because he's an idiot.
Oh, I've just spoilt the post credits of the last episode.
Oh, that's all right.
Where you get to see an entire musical number. That's all I've spoiled. Yeah.
Well, to be honest though, you do see that musical number. I think in episode 1 or 2.
I think it's the first 10 seconds of episode 1, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's not spoiling anything really.
No, I haven't spoiled the entire plot of.
Yeah.
Redacted.
What's that musical called?
It's called Steve Rogers.
Yeah,
Rogers, right?
It's called Rogers.
Rogers. There you go.
Yeah, isn't this? Because I mean, obviously, researching for all of this that appears in No Way Home at some point, doesn't it?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like an Easter egg.
There's probably a billboard up, or there's definitely a Captain America shield being put on the Statue of Liberty.
Oh yes, that's happening. Yes,
yeah. There you go. Yeah.
My optics!
Hello, Orion Ghia here. This particular episode of AARGH My Optics is well long, so we've cut it into more digestible chunks. You can find the next part straight after this in our uploads, or, if I've worked out how to do it, you can see a link on the screen right now. Thanks for listening.